Hello, creeps. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am Doc Fugit, and unfortunately, Season of the Witch has come and gone, and now we are in the season of Tom Turkeys and Santa Claus. So I know that is, I don't know, unless you do like this time of year. I, for one, have a very strange family situation, and it's not the best time of year. So, for any of you who might feel the same way as I do, I'm gonna be here to be your haven for all things cool, at least once a week, all year round. Unless you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, in which case you'll see me about 3 or 4 times a week. Just a little plug, you don't have to pay it any mind. Let's kick right into it. Well, today, as I'm pretty sure I mentioned last week, I figured I was gonna be talking pretty seriously at length about Luca Garganga's new Suspiria remake, and I can't say that I really have too much to say about it. I made a post on Instagram earlier, another fucking plug, follow me on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram, Horrid Lore. But all I really have to say kind of is, meh. It's not bad, but at the same time, it's a remake of something that I'm in love with, and it kind of stripped away a lot of the stuff that I really loved about the original, and there were some things that were kind of not that awesome about it, to be quite frank. But it was a very good movie, I will admit that, and it does deserve a second viewing. But I know I'm gonna feel the same way about all these things forever, and maybe that's just because of my bias about the original Suspiria. But later on we'll get into that, and I'll go more deeply into the original Suspiria and Inferno just to highlight why I feel the way that I do, and by no means do you have to feel compelled to feel the same way. But what I think I'm going to be doing this week mainly is giving you some insight on just some sundries. Things that I've been checking out recently that I'm sure you've been checking out too. I promised last week that I was going to start talking about Haunting on Hill House, and I'm going to do that today. I really wasn't able to stop myself from watching the whole 3rd season of Daredevil in about 2 days, so I'm probably going to talk about that today. I've started the new series of Sabrina, and I'm got some stuff to say about that, so I'm sure we'll talk about that today. So why the fuck don't we just get right into it? First off, let me say I hope you had a wonderful Halloween. I had a pretty decent one. I live up on the 3rd floor, so I don't get too many trick-or-treaters. It's a little depressing, but I got some. Made him some fun tissue paper Tootsie Pops with the kids at my work, who I rewarded by giving them some when they went home. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I went to a Halloween party. I wanted to dress up as the woodsman, the God of Light character from Twin Peaks. If you're not familiar, you can Google that right now, and you'll see why at the last minute I realized that would have been a terrible idea, so I really didn't have too amazing of a costume this year. Usually money's pretty lean around this time of year, and it's kind of difficult to go all out in a costume, for me at least. Except for a couple years ago, I got some rave reviews with my friend Dave, who he actually is over at the Suck Me Crew page, so if you're on Instagram, go give the Suck Me Crew page a follow if you're a wrestling fan. But he went as Walter Sobchak, and I went as the dude from The Big Lebowski, and we got some rave reviews on that one. Maybe I'll post a picture of it if any of you ask for it. But as I've mentioned, it really is the most fun time of the year to me, most stress-free. I feel just the best that I ever do. My inner child is finally able to let its freak flag fly like it isn't at almost any point for the rest of the year. Because, I mean, I think that's the worst part about Thanksgiving and Christmas as an adult, is that you have to be a fucking adult all the time. And I also live in, well, at least one side of my family has a pretty bad drinking problem, so I usually don't get to partake this time of the year either, so that kind of also leaves me in a bummed out state, but it's better than the alternative. Alright, well, enough personal jib-jab. Let's get right down into this. Let's start on something I touched on tacitly before, which is the new season of American Horror Story, Apocalypse, which is really knocking my goddamn socks off, if I gotta be honest with you, which has never really happened before. I mean, I loved the first season, Murder House, but towards the end it kind of veered off and lost me a little bit, but to be completely frank and honest, the return to Murder House that they did a few weeks ago kind of just shut my mouth on that, because this newest season is all based on what they did at the end of the first season. In the fact that the apocalypse is caused by the Antichrist, who was birthed in the first season, if you're a fan. And I can't talk enough about how much I love this guy that's playing Michael, Cody Fern. He's fucking phenomenal. Probably the best actor that has been found on this show, if you ask me. He really doesn't have a resume so far, but if you ask me, I think he's going to have a pretty fat one with the next 2 or 3 years, and if you ask me, I think he's probably going to do even better than Evan Peters did. He has a fucking commanding presence as Michael, the Antichrist in Apocalypse. And also, he's able to show this kind of fragile nature in the flashbacks. And I don't know, like, I've never seen a season where there weren't episodes where I was like, it's starting to dip off. Like, this season is just fucking firing on all goddamn cylinders. It's the most fun, exciting season I've seen thus far. But as I've mentioned, I have skipped a few of the seasons. The only ones I've watched in full have been Murder House, Asylum, Coven. That's it, to be completely honest with you. I tried the first couple of Roanoke. I honestly couldn't even get past the first episode of that Trump one. I can only get through one of Hotel. I could only get through one in the Freak Show one. To be completely honest with you, there was nothing there for me, to be honest with you. But this season is just, it still has the same flavor and everything like that. It still has all of the things that might have put me off before, but I'll be damned if it's not one of the most interesting things on TV right now. I cannot stop watching it, and I can't look away. And also, speaking of that, Cody Fern, I just saw the other day that he has fucking replaced Kevin Spacey as the new main male character in House of Cards in the final season. It seems like a lot of people are pretty pissed off that they did it without Kevin Spacey, but good for him. Like I said, his resume is going to be fucking fat in no time. And everything that they're bringing back in this new season is all pertaining to the things that I thought were the only things that seemed like coherent storylines. And maybe I'm just a mind reader, or maybe those were truly the only stories that really could lead anywhere. And I'm all on board. I can't wait until the new episode tomorrow night, and I'm very excited that it's going to end after 10 episodes, to be completely honest, because that way I pretty much all but am assured of the fact that it's not going to go off the rails at the end like it has so many times. Because, to be completely honest with you, I hated the end of Coven. I'm just going to leave it at that. I hated the end of Coven, and I loathed the end of Asylum. And like I said, I didn't really care for the end of Murder House, but now I have a newfound amazing appreciation for it. Well, that's all I really got to say about American Horror Story, as I'm not really the biggest aficionado of it, but I just can't say enough how much this new season is worth checking out, so check it out if you fucking haven't. Alright, next I think I'm going to segue into Season 3 of Daredevil, which, in my opinion, was the best season of Daredevil, and I didn't think I'd be able to say that after the second one. I also didn't think I'd be able to say that after the first one, with how amazing the introduction of Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk was. Sorry. But they really have just made him cooler and cooler since day one. Even his little, 2-episode stint in Season 2 was cooler than anything he did in Season 1. And my God, Season 3 just has me salivating at the idea of Wilson Fisk making his way into a Spider-Man movie. Because, I don't know what the fuck's going on with all of these Netflix shows, because you may have noticed that Iron Fist and Luke Cage have been canceled. This has been leaving a lot of speculation, because Jessica Jones has not been canceled, and obviously Daredevil has not been canceled. What a lot of people think is that they are going to take both Luke Cage and Iron Fist and put them together in a Heroes for Hire spinoff, which I think would honestly be a fucking power move. Because honestly, other than Luke dabbing in that first episode of the second season, in the first season of Iron Fist, which was kind of weak. Both those shows are pretty fucking solid, if you ask me. A lot more solid than the second season of Jessica Jones. If anything was going to get fucking axed, I figured that would have been the first thing to go. So I think there's a good chance we're going to get Heroes for Hire rather than no more Iron Fist and Luke Cage. But who knows? I might be biting my tongue having to say that I'm wrong soon enough. But if they cancel this Daredevil show, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with myself, because it really does just keep on getting better and better, and it's just leaving me... Like, I don't even care if they introduce Norman Osborn into the MCU at this point. Spider-Man just needs Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk, and they can have themselves a gigantic fucking bad guy that's going to lead a bunch of other bad guys. Like, that's the one complaint maybe I'd have about Wilson Fisk in the TV show, is that the only supervillain so far that he's been able to utilize as one of his many tools was Agent Poindexter in this newest season, aka Bullseye, in which they perfectly had Bullseye without having to have him with some ridiculous Bullseye outfit because he was wearing the Daredevil outfit, because he was framing Daredevil if you didn't see the trailers. I'm not really giving you a spoiler if you've seen the trailers. And it also gave Bullseye like a ridiculously in-depth background, and normally those are things with a villain that, at least in a comic book adaptation, like, you know, I don't care too much to be like, oh, I'm on his side. But they didn't really do that. They just kind of showed him as a sociopath, a broken man, and I mean, you felt some empathy towards him, but at the same time, he was just a fucked up, broken guy that was never going to be a fucking normal person. And I mean, I think that's about as much of the best of both worlds as you could possibly get, because you do get that feeling of empathy for him, but at the same time, there's really no redemption whatsoever in this character, and you can tell he's so far gone that he's never gonna go anywhere near the light again. Sorry if you're hearing like a buzzing out there or some shit. There's like an old-fashioned alarm clock buzzing off downstairs or somewhere next door. I have no fucking clue. It's very annoying. It's been going off for like 2 hours now. And so you hearing that? This is what I live with. Alright, well. And as I was saying earlier, Wilson Fisk is also painted just so much more as a real human being in this one, and double on top of that, we get the classic white suit, black undershirt, and even at the end, rose boutonniere Kingpin. It is fucking something phenomenal. And after seeing that, that is what wants me. That's what wants. There's a part of me that would do almost anything to see his iteration of the Kingpin interact with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Fucking someone please make it happen. You hearing this? Alright, sorry if that was a bit of ear rape, but I just wanted you to hear just how fucking annoying and grating that is. Lost my train of thought. But, yeah, someone needs to make that fucking happen. I don't even care about getting Matthew McConaughey as Norman Osborn or whatever, even though I do care about that. I'd love to see that, but I just want to see Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk going up against Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Somebody make it happen. And I also would really like to see Charlie Cox as... Alright, we're going to keep pushing forward here. I don't give a fuck about that rude asshole. You ain't ruining my day. You ain't ruining their day. We're doing this. Because have you guys seen how amazing the new Spider-Man movie looks? Have you seen how cool Jake Gyllenhaal looks as Mysterio? I just want to see fucking Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio be in that third movie. Even, oh man, maybe they'll be in a post-credit scene in the second movie. Who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Because even if they dissolve all of these Netflix shows, and that's what they're doing with canceling Iron Fist and Luke Cage, even if there's no more Daredevil seasons, if I get that, it'll be enough. Alright, well, that was my takeaway from Season 3 of Daredevil. And much like at the end of the first season of The Punisher, which also might go away, we get a nice little look into how the villain has turned into the more comic booky version of what he will become. And before I forget it, I just saw the trailer the other day for this new AMC show, which is coming out on November 19th, actually. I don't know how this one slipped past my radar. It's called The Little Drummer Girl, and it's going to be, I think, a 6-episode limited series, and Chan-wook Park is directing it, the guy who directed Oldboy. So I'm almost positive this is going to be fucking amazing, because not only is he directing it, Alex Skarsgård's going to be in it, Michael Shannon's going to be in it, two of my favorite fucking actors. That Skarsgård family is fucking phenomenal. All three of father and both those brothers. And it's based on a book that was written by the guy who did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is one of my fucking favorites as far as spy movies go from the last 10 years. So I think that should be pretty fucking worth checking out. And if it's flown past your radar like it did mine, it's going to start November 19th, very soon. Something to get excited about. Okay, now let's segue on to something else that I can actually talk about. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which I've only gotten about 4 episodes in, and yeah, I'm liking it pretty well so far. I can't say that I like it better than the original live-action version, but it is pretty fun. It's pretty spooky. I kind of wish that it was, honestly, I wish it was a little bit more kid-friendly and fun, and didn't try so hard to be evil and American Horror Story-esque. But they pull it off pretty well. They get a pretty creepy atmosphere, have some pretty terrifying effects, I won't lie. And the story is pretty fun, pretty engaging. I really can't do more than one episode at a time. It's not as bingeable as what I was saying about Daredevil, which I finished in about 2 days. Like I said, I can only do about one at a time because they are a fucking hour a piece, and there's quite a few of them. But every time I watch one, I find myself enjoying it. And I really don't recognize too many of the actors from it other than, what's her face? Arwen, I think, or Eowyn or Arwen from Lord of the Rings, who plays Zelda in this version, Aunt Zelda. But, Kiernan Shipka, or however you say her name, is actually very good as Sabrina Spellman. And she's fucking only, 19 years old. So, she is fresh out of high school and a very talented actress. And the guy who plays Harvey, too, he's 23. And he's phenomenal. He reminds me very much of James from Twin Peaks, if you're a fan of that show. The show also does kind of remind me a little bit of, well, not as much as its sister show on the CW, Riverdale, which I never was able to get too much into, because going off of that, it did kind of just feel like a watered-down version of Twin Peaks using Archie Comics characters. I was very happy to see that this one did not elicit the same feeling. And actually, in talking about people that I didn't recognize, I did recognize Mr. Bronson Pinchot as the principal in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and he's pretty terrific in it. So, I really don't have too much to say about it because I'm not too far along in the story, but I don't know. If you're a Harry Potter fan, if you're a fan of the old show, if you're a fan of American Horror Story, you should definitely give it a look. Or if you're a fan of Riverdale, I guess you should definitely give this one a look, because it is better than most of the Netflix fanfare as far as television goes, if you ask me. Alright, and last thing before I get into the Suspiria remake that I gots to talk to you about, that I'm sure you're already on board with, is the Netflix limited series version of The Haunting of Hill House, which is a revisionist version of the Shirley Jackson novel from, when did the book come out? Gotta fact check this one, hold up, creeps. The original novel by Shirley Jackson came out in 1959. And this one is a heavy revision on the original story, but kind of keeps a little bit of the bare bones in there, but it's by no means a bad thing, and that's coming from somebody who usually hates shit like that, i.e., the Bates Motel. But this was made by Mike Flanagan, who was the same guy that made Gerald's Game, which was one of my fucking favorite movies that Netflix has put out so far, to be honest. And they've put out a couple of good movies. I see a lot of people talk a lot of shit about Netflix horror movies, but they have some that are pretty goddamn decent. I think some people are just a little too close-minded to check them out. Now, this show has some fucking amazing acting, some amazing writing. It reminds me a lot of Hereditary from earlier on this year, and the fact that it's kind of just like a very claustrophobic family psychological horror, and the actual paranormal objects or activity take place more in the background, to be honest. The stuff that really freaks you out the most is the real shit, to be, well, from my opinion, at least. I think it painted a pretty perfect picture of what it's like to be in such a shattered family that's been broken from such a horrific event. And, I mean, love it or leave it, it had a very tasteful ending that fit very well with what we got in there. And, I mean, a little nice slice of life, honestly. It was, I wouldn't say it was nice because it was very upsetting. It made me pretty depressed at points. It's that emotionally claustrophobic, like I was saying earlier, but it's definitely worth a check unless you're going through some type of horrible emotional trauma right now. I think that everybody who's into horror, or I mean everybody in general, should at least give this one a chance, because it really is one of those rare things that kind of makes you sit back and evaluate your life and how good or how shitty you have it. That's really all I got to say about this one, because it's just good, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody. Just go give it a chance. Alright, now let's get to what I was talking about earlier. Suspiria. Well, let's go back about 2 years ago now, when I first heard that they're going to be doing a remake of this movie. And at first it was supposed to be David Gordon Green making it, who did Vice Principals, Eastbound and Down, and now Halloween, which he took, I'm guessing, in the stead after he got let go from the project, because I guess his was going to be too expensive. And then we got... Alright, I'm going to say it properly this time and not be a dickhead. Alright, I'm going to try my best to say it properly. Luca Guadagnino, the director of Call Me By Your Name, and I came on to direct it, and I was very put off because I really wasn't into the idea of an Italian director making like an American version of an Italian produced movie. It didn't make too much sense to me. It was like it's like the same idea as them remaking an American version of The Raid, when The Raid isn't an American movie, but it was made by an American director. So, I mean, it just doesn't make too much sense to me. But once I started seeing more about the movie, I became more intrigued. And then I heard that it had the 2.5-hour runtime, and I was very, very off-put. Then I started hearing some of the music from Tom York, and I'm not a huge Radiohead fan, but his version of Goblin's Suspiria soundtrack maybe is my favorite album of the year so far. The music is amazing. I cannot deny that or stress it enough. And then Quentin Tarantino gave it his seal of approval by fucking allegedly kissing Luca on the mouth after seeing it. But when all was said and done and I saw it and it was over, I couldn't help but... I was expecting to feel passionate one way or another. This was supposed to be a very divisive movie from what everyone was saying and from the way it seemed, but I mean... I did like it, but I mean, I didn't love it, and it was just, meh. That's all I have to say about it, really, honestly. After the first time seeing it, maybe I'll have a lot more to say afterwards, because there were some things in it that were pretty magnificent, like the music that I mentioned earlier. Dakota Johnson's performance was amazing. The choreography was amazing, but god damn, that 2.5-hour runtime, and just like the subplots and the fucking political shit. I just wish it wasn't a Suspiria movie, because when I link the ideas that I link with Suspiria and Inferno are like a Lynchian movie or a Lynchian idea of cinema, that you're presented with, you just see things and you interpret them the way that you are going to interpret them, and there's no definite way to put your finger on what's going on. Like, Inferno and Suspiria are like a beautiful poem that there's no real answer to what the meaning is, and 2018's is like a beautiful appendix on a bunch of dusty-ass scholars' study of said poems. Beautiful, but a little off-putting nonetheless. I'm not going to spoil anything here. I'm not going to say anything more because maybe I'll have to end up biting my tongue after seeing it again. But the last thing that I have to say is that it was the fact that Tilda Swinton played so many characters. It seemed like it was going to be interesting, but by the end, it just seemed like hubris and a very dumb idea, not like to fucking put yourself in a position where you're not going to have any male actors in the movie. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like I said, I don't think it was like a terrible movie or anything like that. I think that it was just extremely pigeonholed in the fact that it was a remake of such an ethereal story and film, and that it took such a hard stance on things that didn't really work, if you ask me. Like, I do implore all fans of the original, all fans of the genre to go and give it a look, but I think you honestly might feel a little bit similar to me. I don't know. It seems like it's got a lot of people up in arms. A lot of people are very just as excited as everyone was at Cinecon, where everybody supposedly threw up at that scene, which I honestly thought was pretty tame. I mean, you really just you can't really freak me out too much. I don't know. Body horror has to be a little bit more otherworldly, if you ask me. That's all I'm going to say about it, because again, I'm not going to give any spoilers because it could be that ridiculous to you. And I know I used to give snack suggestions for movies. A good snack suggestion for this movie will be a pretzel. And you'll know why when you check it out, which actually might be kind of tough to figure out how to do it, because I had to drive a fucking hour to the closest cinema that was fucking playing this movie, and that was a little bit irksome to me, to be completely and utterly honest with you. It's like Amazon's trying to not make money off of this movie, because it's definitely got a decent amount of buzz around it, and it's definitely worth a look. I don't know why they're not just fucking streaming it on Amazon if they're giving us this little ability to check the movie out. Like, even if we have to pay for it, like, and you're the only ones that have it, like, if you're not going to give people the ability to see it, then what the fuck's even the point of releasing it? I don't know. Very irksome. Just because it is a wide release and it has so many fucking major league actors in it, and it's a big budget, big movie. It's something to fucking talk about, regardless of what your opinion is. Alright, that's all I'm gonna say on it. I'm not trying to be too harsh on it or anything like that. I'm just trying to give my opinion on it, and I thought I'd have a lot more to say, but I honestly don't. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that today is voting day, and I do hope that you went out and did vote. But on the opposite side of that coin, I kind of hope you went out and voted and then didn't really go out and spew who you voted for or what your opinions are. Because the lovely thing about democracy is that all of us can choose what we want to choose. And a lot of people are going to choose things that, you don't specifically agree with. And I know we live in very ramped up times, that what I'm saying is a very simplified version of a firm philosophy right now. But I feel like we should go vote, speak on what we believe in, and kind of leave it at that. Just try and move forward as a positive democratic union, regardless of who our fucking president is. And that is in no way condoning the president. It's just saying that I would like to live as one happy country rather than the shithole that we are turning ourselves into. Here's to hoping things get a little bit better after today, creeps. That's all I'm going to have to say on that. Like I said last week, I'm not going deep in politics on this. That was just a little human philosophy. Now, finally, what I'm going to be segueing into is a project that I have been a little anxious, trepidatious to start, because it involves my work. And that is something that I hold very close to the chest, and I find very difficult to show people, even the people closest to me. So, what I have for you today is the first installment of the first story that Doc Fugit ever wrote, The Pernicious Portrait. Fun little ghost story, haunted house story, very much in the vein of one of my favorite shows, The Night Gallery. Well, what I'm going to be doing is I'm heavily revising the story because I wrote it about probably 3 years ago now, and it needs some touching up. So I have fully touched up the first half of the story, and I recorded the first segment of it because I figured, hey, what the hey? Why not let my creeps in on what I'm doing? So this is our introduction to The Pernicious Portrait, in which we meet Gilderoy St. Sebastian, his butler Clive Beecham, and a mysterious stranger who gifts them with something from Gilderoy's deceased aunt. And everything kinda comes together in this introduction, but not really. There's still a lot more to be explained. It's very much, like I was describing earlier, I tried evoking a sense of mystery. So you really can't really figure out what's going on until you finish it and go back and look again, to be honest with you. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick around here, and the next 8 minutes are going to be my introduction to my very first story that I ever wrote. And here's what I'm going to ask of you, creeps, because like I said, I am very trepidatious when it comes to this sort of thing. Please, just tweet at me, comment on one of my pictures on Instagram, direct message me your feelings. I just really need some fucking feedback on this so that I can give you what you need, what I need, what everybody needs, what'll make everybody happy. So don't be too surprised if you see a new installment next week, especially if you creeps listen up and tell me what you think, even if it's something negative. Just let me know what you fucking think, okay? Well, without any further ado, here you go. The introduction of The Pernicious Portrait.
Over the verdant mountains and through the mist of the tenebrous marsh lies St. Sebastian Manor, 7 years ago inherited by the nephew of Ava St. Sebastian. Her once stately estate had become less and less stately with each passing day under its new owner, Gilderoy St. Sebastian. The title of Count was merely assumed to aid his already puffed-up ego. Gilderoy was a man of leisure who fancied himself an art dealer, another spurious self-afforded title. Gilderoy was inside the study enjoying a smoke through an ivory opera-length cigarette holder. His supple frame leaned heavily against the back of the maroon swivel chair, forcing the mahogany to moan as if it were some inferior cedar. Gilderoy was camouflaged by a persistent plume of smoke and his favorite burgundy smoking jacket, which was the exact same shade as the velvet lining on the seat. Busy perusing the latest issue of the Blue Review, Gilderoy had no care in the world, admiring the miniature pulpy print of de la Mare's newest work, The Song of the Mad Prince. Clive Beecham, Gilderoy's sullen butler, stood in the doorway, breaking through the calming cloud of solitude. Clive was dressed in a musty old tuxedo which strongly resembled an undertaker's garb. He cleared his ancient throat, announcing in the most intelligible voice he could muster, "Caller! At the front gate, sir. He seems to require an appraisal. At least, that's what I infer from the large framed canvas he is carrying." Couldn't possibly have chosen a more inopportune time, Gilderoy muttered to himself, loudly crinkling his magazine closed. He exhaled slowly and continued. "Well, as it seems to be a matter of business, I suppose that there's time for a guest. Just make sure you get right on dinner, Beecham," Gilderoy finished. "I'll send him up right away, and start on the pineapple chicken post-haste, Count Gilderoy." "Excellent." Gilderoy's chair shrieked as he spun round to face the window, partially to continue avoiding his mystery guest until it was absolutely necessary, but mostly for the more immediate scenery of the singular lavender flower inside a thin vase filled with an opaque liquid. The plant sprouted feelings of apprehension and guilt. Why had he even looked? Unless he was some sort of... The devil of those chaps who fancy abusing themselves called... The internal monologue ceased upon the opening and closing of the door, followed by soft footsteps. "Greetings, Count Saint Sebastian. I am Alistair Nesbit. I was a dear friend of your Aunt Ava's," the stranger said. "You may not remember me, since we only met once, and it was in passing." Gilderoy ignored him, still staring transfixedly at the flower. Finally, painstakingly, he rotated his chair to face him. Gilderoy realized that the visitor had inferred correctly. All he knew was that the man looked like a middle-aged Boris Karloff, covered from head to toe in some horrid, archaic garb. He was also, as Clive had mentioned, clutching a rather large canvas, front-end facing his chest, a strange symbol etched on the back. One Gilderoy vaguely recognized, but the memory was too fuzzy to recall. However, once Alistair placed it face down between them on the desk, memory flooded back. He knew exactly where he'd seen the symbol before, and who this man was. "Oh yes, now I recall. You were retained by my dearly departed aunt to paint what would be her first and final portrait. Is this the final product? I must admit that I am surprised it took you so long, but nonetheless, I am more than grateful for your bringing it here. What a fine monument to my wonderful surrogate mother. Something this house requires desperately." Nesbit began to respond, but Gilderoy, seemingly recalling something of the utmost importance, interrupted him. "I must warn you, though, Mr. Nesbit, I am a professional art dealer. While the value of personal sentiment on this specific item may be infinite to me, I cannot in good conscience pay more than it is worth in my world." Alistair politely waited for him to finish, smiling passively, staring at the flower on the windowsill behind Gilderoy. "That was not my intention at all, my humble count. This is a gift that we being your aunt's collective pupils, are obligated to bestow upon her only living descendant. You see, the reason the final product was so tardy is due to the simple fact that it required finishing touches from all of her students and colleagues. Namely, the flower on the vase to her left." He pointed to the identical flower on the sill behind Gilderoy. "Ah, you yourself are an admirer. How kismet. It is monkshood, a beautiful purplish flower that when ingested causes several unpleasant symptoms that lead to heart failure. Much like your dear aunt suffered herself." Gilderoy sputtered out smoke when this was said. "So beautiful, yet so inconspicuously deadly." Gilderoy was shaken to the bone by these last statements from this mysterious man. This Alistair could not possibly know his secret, let alone deconstruct everything he'd worked so meticulously to build. "I had no idea that my aunt had any inclination towards the art. I assumed that the portrait was merely for vanity's sake." "Yes, she was indeed intrigued by all forms of art. I'm sure there's much of your aunt that would surprise even you. Not to say that you didn't know her. Rather that she was a Renaissance woman, from another wonderful time, it seemed." "Amen to that. What a fine and unexpected gift this divine painting is along with your company. Come, my new friend, stay for supper and regale me with tales of my illustrious Aunt Ava. My man, Mr. Beecham, makes a brilliant pineapple chicken dish." "As tempting as that sounds, I'm afraid I must decline your offer. There is still much for me to do before the sun sets. Good day, Count Saint Sebastian." In a flash, Mr. Nesbit was gone. Seconds later, Gilderoy heard the front door slam, making the man nothing more than a mere memory. Gilderoy was relieved by Alistair's declination to his dinner invitation. The man made him uneasy. Gilderoy was also disconcerted and confused as to what should be done with the grim portrait. He lost himself staring back and forth at the painting in his hands and the flower on the windowsill. Several minutes passed before Clive re-entered the room, this time completely unaware of the transfixed state of the Count.
"Dinner is served."
"Clive!" You scared me. He brought a gift for us.